it was that I stopped worrying so much about managing time. I stopped worrying about how much time they were sitting in their seats at their desk doing their work. And I shifted to really focusing in on the quality of the work, doing fewer tasks, but going deeper. And I figured out that when I did fewer things and I did them with more meaning, I stopped worrying about time and I worried about quality. Everything shifted. The productivity was better. I felt better. I felt like my followers and the people who listened to me were getting better versions of me.
Welcome to Reward, the podcast of The Trust. We are the show specifically for women entrepreneurs who want to build businesses into the multi-million-dollar revenues and beyond, but especially because we know the reward is much greater than that. I'm Allie Brown, and I'm excited to introduce you to these diverse female leaders from a variety of industries, women making huge impact and who are unwilling to settle for the status quo. On the web, visit jointhetrust.org to learn more about our modern community for forward-thinking 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. That's jointhetrust.org. See you there. Now, get ready to enjoy this episode's powerful conversation. Good morning, Tanya.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. It's so nice to see you.
I know, this is fun. I love that you're doing the podcast with video. This is a lot of fun.
I know. My team talked me into it. Once I'm on it, I like it. They did.
My team talked me into it.
They're like, we need content. They're like, could you do a video? They're like, they just told me, they're like, you're doing a video podcast. I'm like, okay, just set me up. Make sure I look good.
I was also resistant, but it is so much more fun. And I love that people get to see my reactions and, all kinds of fun things that you can do on video that you can't do just with
our physical comedy. Yeah. I do move around a lot when I talk, which adds a lot to the experience, I think. Or I look kind of manic when I'm doing this stuff, but I am so glad to get you back on the show. I interviewed you once, if not twice, on my Glambition Radio podcast. You've also had me on your podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
The Intentional Advantage. Yeah. So I've had you on Intentional Advantage twice, just recently, not that long ago, a couple of weeks back. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. Plus we talk all the time. So
yeah. And we always get deep. Like when you and I have a conversation, there's different layers to it. And I think today, what I was thinking about, like, oh, where do I want Tanya to go today? I wanted to start off by asking you, like, what's really juicing you up lately to talk about in your business, in your life, just everything.
Yeah, well, as you know, I just recently had my OxfordTalk go live. And the whole premise behind my OxfordTalk is that time management is dead. And it really goes back to this whole idea that when the pandemic hit, we were all scrambling around. Everybody was like pivoting left and right. Mm-hmm. And what I found really interesting was my productivity, my team's productivity, it increased while all this chaos was happening. And it wasn't about them working from home. It wasn't any of that people were attributing, shifts in their business to. It was that I stopped worrying so much about managing time. I stopped worrying about how much time they were sitting in their seats at their desk doing their work. And I shifted to really focusing in on the quality of the work, doing fewer tasks, but going deeper. I don't like going shallow on anything. I mean, you and I know that in our conversations or anything I do, I like to go deep. And I figured out that when I did fewer things and I did them with more meaning, I stopped worrying about time and I worried about quality. Everything shifted. The productivity was better. I felt better. I felt like my followers and the people who listened to me were getting better versions of me and my content. And so when the Oxford Talks people came to me and they said, we want you to talk about something that's been percolating in your mind, with something you haven't talked about in either one of your books, which that's hard. You've written 2 books. You're like, I have a lot.
You're like, that may be all I've got. Yeah.
I know, right? But they said, we want something you haven't talked about. And I thought about how in my own life, I have been making this very intentional shift to letting go of time management and really shifting from time-oriented to task-oriented. And really, it's created this beautiful repacing in my life that I've been experiencing.
Mm. It kind of goes with what we're all feeling right now in the world, that it is a bit of a time warp. It's really interesting. I really feel like the last year or two, like time is different than it was before. And I think, of course, it's partly our perspective on it. But literally, don't you feel right now that there's like this expansion and compression of time? It just keeps happening like in different wavelengths. Or, I mean, it's going to be June, like by the time this comes out, like it will be June 2023. And
No, I
it's
know.
it's bizarre. And so in a way, it's great because it kind of shakes up the whole idea that time really isn't real, right? And
Yes.
which is the antithesis of the Industrial Revolution and how we all learned to work and how it's so ingrained in us. I remember the day number one of my little freelance job when I first quit my job and I started my own little business and I was in my apartment. I was like at my desk at 8 a.m. for no reason, right? But I just thought I was going to be
Right.
like I got up, went to the gym, and it was like at my desk at 8 a.m. And I had my computer and a fax machine. And I was excited to start, like, to me, like, okay, I'm working because I'm sitting here. Like that was work to me. And now, it is so ingrained though. I still will have moments that like of like occasional like guilt and shame over not having an 8-hour
Well,
workday, you know?
I should be working 8 hours a
Yeah.
day, or I should be working
Yeah.
40 hours a week. And should is a red flag word. Anytime that I say to myself, I should be doing something, I need to stop and ask
Mm,
myself, whoa, is that even true? Is that accurate?
yeah.
Is that based in reality or some story that I'm telling myself? And
Hmm.
there is a lot of comfort in doing what everybody else is doing, which is the 40-hour week and go, go, go. But the truth is that you're right. That's all based off the Industrial Revolution. That's one of the things I talk about in that talk. It was devised by Henry Ford in 1926, at the same time that we're treating diseases with mercury and arsenic. So I'm
Hmm.
not sure those old models are still in play here. And we have stuck to those because we think we should. And
Hmm.
when we break free of that, we start to realize that time really is a social construct. Time is no more than how we perceive it. I like to say that if we had a relationship status with time on social media, it would say it's complicated, because we have this really interesting relationship where we feel like we have these vast, giant Olympic pool size vaults of time. Oh, I'll do that someday. That thing I really want to do, I will do that one day, right? So we feel like we have all this time in the world, while at the same time pushing off those same goals and dreams, saying, I don't have enough time. There's this really interesting push and pull of time, but really, time is in how we perceive it. If we slow down, if we are more present, time stretches. An hour
Mm,
on the beach is very different to an hour in your office right before you give a presentation to a client or do
hmm.
something like that, right? And so we have to recognize that time is like taffy. It stretches and it pulls and it constricts. And it's up to us in how we want to interact with time. So it's
Mm.
really about shifting and changing our relationship with time, which means oftentimes shifting our relationship with ourselves and our expectations that are put on us by everybody else.
Yeah. This could be like a week-long workshop, by the way. I think to
Totally good.
undo, right? The undoing
It
is the
is.
battle, right? That's half the battle. Tell everyone who is not familiar with you about your companies, and maybe how you became really interested in this whole concept of the
Yes.
time and
Well,
productivity.
I started my first company in 2008. No better time than right at the start of the Great Recession. So I started that company with $50. And it was fully supposed to be a side hustle when I first started it. But I had a conversation with my husband, John, who you know really well, of course. And at the time, he was working for Fortune 500 companies doing international marketing. And he would leave and he would go around the world, literally circling the globe all the way back and coming on the other side of the planet back home. And it would take him like
Can you
three or
say just
four
a series
weeks.
of one-way tickets, like going around, right? He had like,
No, he literally bought a ticket. It's called the Around the World ticket. And it's designed so you leave and you go all the way back around and you can jump to different continents throughout. I don't know, it's some kind of crazy thing.
wow.
And you get all the way top to the top level of, diamond, platinum, whatever status on the airline. It's kind of nuts. But I made a decision because he was gone so much and he was really unhappy with all that traveling, that I was going to grow my little side hobby business into something that could absorb his MBA income. And I did that. I achieved that within a year, grew that company, had a lot of fun with that company. But around 2014, I looked at my husband. At that point, he'd been working for me since 2009. So my husband has worked for me as my CMO since 2009.
And you're still married, by the way.
We're still very happily married.
Because for some that has not gone well.
For some people, it doesn't work. It works very well for us.
Yeah.
But, I looked at him and I was like, I want to do something different. This isn't fulfilling me. This is not creating the impact. And I realized one of the things that I really loved was productivity. That's what allowed me to scale and grow a company from $50 to absorbing an MBA income, 6 figures, in less than a year with zero business experience, by the way. Never even took a course in college, which I think is crazy. And so I realized that it was truly being productive that allowed me to scale and grow and still be focused on my kids, leaving work every day at 3:00, not working on Fridays. I work a 4-day week and doing all of those things. And so I really wanted to teach other people how to do this too. And that's how I got into productivity. And then, of course, there's been twists and turns throughout the whole thing, with books being written through HarperCollins and podcasts that were launched. And it's been this amazing journey of running InkWell Press and tying myself to that title as CEO and owner and riding that rocket ship, which was fantastic until, as you know, I totally shifted things and decided to sell my company. And that's really when I started diving in even more into this idea of repacing and shifting how I work even more than I had before.
Yeah. What are some things that we can do right away to start seeing this differently? Because it's easy to say, okay, I'm going to start thinking this new way, but then it just doesn't happen. There's a lot of undoing.
Yeah. There is a lot of undoing. And I think one of the things we often default to is, I don't have enough time. Our words have so much power. And when we say, I don't have enough time, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Or, oh, I'm so busy. Whenever anyone asks you how you are, oh, I'm so busy. We find a lot of our value in the doing, in the accomplishing, in the achievements, in the shiny trophies. And we feel like the more things we check off that to-do list, somehow that makes us better. Even though we're worn out, we're exhausted, we're falling into bed, not even slipping into bed, we're falling into bed worn out, thinking we haven't gotten enough done. And so if we shift how we think about our day, and you realize that you are in charge of your day, you are the one in control of your calendar, not your team, not your kids, not, anyone else. You get to decide who gets onto your calendar and who doesn't, and what pockets of time are for you. When we take that back and we start using words like, oh, I have more than enough time for everything I need. That was like my mantra on repeat. I have more than enough time for everything I need. Just the other day, I was running a little bit late, which is very unusual. I like to get everywhere 5 minutes early. I am a productivity expert. So
you're good on time. I've now that I think about it, I've noticed that. I've never seen you late for anything. I think unless you literally flew in late or something,
Yes, that's pretty much the only time. But I left the house a little later than I had anticipated. My watch was off and I got in the car and I was feeling a little flustered and stressed. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was going to Pilates. I'm going to be late. I like to get there 5 minutes early to stretch before and kind of get myself in the right mindset. And I got in the car and I started driving and I was furiously driving. And then I thought, nope, let's rethink this. I have more than enough time to get there. I'm going to be there on time and I'm going to do it in a relaxed way. It doesn't do me any good to go and stress myself out on the way to Pilates to then try to calm myself down. Let's do it now. So really in the moment, recognizing, wait, I'm playing into the old time paradigm. Let me step back and really think to myself, I have enough time. I have enough time to get there on time. It's going to be okay. And sure enough, still got there a couple minutes early, even though I left my house late.
So I did that once with a flight and I just remembered it. And there was no scientific reason I still made that flight. Do you know what I mean? But I did that exactly. I was like, this is my only choice right now I even stopped looking at the clock. I remember I turned my phone over and I'm like, I'm going to get ready
Yes.
and pack for this trip. And I will be at the airport in plenty of time. And like my rational part of my brain's like, that's a joke. You will never make it, and then the part of me is like, dear God, like support me through this. And there's more than enough time for everything. And I made that flight. And I think an incentive as well as if I remember the twins were teething and I'm like, this is my one freaking chance to get on a plane and get out of here. It was like one of those mommy trips that I'm like, I got to go to this conference, right? It's really important conference across the country for like a week. It was my escape. But those moments, I still will do that occasionally because when you unplug from, so we're going to get deep for a minute, when you're unplugging from the matrix, right? And realizing that, okay, this is in my control. This is all, I love what you said, a social construct, miracles will happen. So I'm going to challenge everyone to try this and let us know what happens, but try this one day. Like when you know you're running late, stop, breathe. And what do they say, Tanya? I have more than enough time for what I need to do here.
I have more than enough time for what I need to do. It really is surprising because it's almost like your whole nervous system gets tied up into a knot. When we start focusing on the clock, it adds stress, it adds overwhelm, which then creates burnout. When we stop focusing on the clock and we focus on the quality, whether we're talking about the task or the quality of our life as we're driving in the car, and we breathe and we become more present, it's like, oh, okay, this is okay. And suddenly your nervous system calms down and everything seems to work so much better. I mean, it's like anything else. When you're scrambling around trying to do something, you're making mistakes and errors and you're adding stress. When you slow down and you really take it in, you're so much more present, which makes you just better.
It appears to me now that we're having this conversation that time even was a really solidified construct of the Industrial Revolution. When you think about it, that's probably when everyone started getting.
We started measuring punctuality. We started trying to manage time, which we cannot manage time. Time is simply time. It's like wrestling a bear. It doesn't work. The bear's going to win every time. So yes, it absolutely is this social construct from the Industrial Revolution. What I think is interesting is prior to that, for hundreds of thousands of years, we moved in harmony with time as humans. We really played to the natural cycles and rhythms of the seasons. When it was winter and there was no electricity, hey, Laura Ingalls Wilder, they went to bed as soon as it got dark. They rested. They hunkered down. They didn't stay. I know. Who doesn't love that old show? I mean, I feel like that was part of my childhood rearing, right? But they didn't have these long days like we do now. And in the summer, it was okay, going out and doing all the things, but there were these cycles of rest and cycles of harvesting and cycles of production. And now in our modern world, we are pushing and pushing and pushing. And in the Industrial Revolution, there was a whole new industry that was created. There was a career called window knockers. There were people called window knockers. Their whole job was to go in the morning and knock on the window with a cane, a big long cane that they would knock on the window to wake people up. Because we weren't used to waking up early in the morning. We were used to waking up after the sun was up. So we are completely hijacking and shifting our biological rhythms by forcing ourselves to be time oriented. It's moving against the way our bodies naturally want to work and operate, and it makes us less productive.
And especially for women. I mean, especially for us. I just feel it's the antithesis of the feminine space and time and that magic that we really have that is
women
opposite to everything.
We operate in cycles and we're pushing against the cycles by really pushing the boundaries of what our bodies are capable of. And we know this scientifically. This is not something that I'm woo-wooing out there. It truly is scientifically proven that we're pushing our bodies beyond what they're really designed to do.
Wow. So let's switch gears here. And I want to talk a bit about your physical products and that whole side of your business. It's so fascinating, always was to me from the moment I met you. I'm like, oh, this is going to be so cool working with Tanya because she has physical products. It would be like me going to my mom and say, I sell these. And she'd finally be like, oh my gosh, you have a real business. She still doesn't understand what I do. So like you have a thing, you sell the things in the stores, and like, it makes sense to people, right? It's a whole other, retail and having products in stores like Staples, right? I think you've had things in Target or all these big box stores. Tell everybody about that part of your business and, just a bit more about like where things are going now for you.
Yes. Well, it's funny because anytime I tell people that I have a physical product, they go, "Oh, that's so fun." And I'm like,
Yeah.
logistics, manufacturing, freighting, not all fun
Shipping.
and
Yep.
games.
Warehouse.
Shipping is, that alone is a headache that anyone who runs a product-based business listening right now is like, shipping rates,
Mm-hmm.
shipping, all of the operations that shipping takes is a whole logistical nightmare headache. But it is fun. It is nice to have products and to be able to, because for a long time, my parents were like, "What is it you do?" And it's like, here, you
Mm-hmm.
can see this. So I started off InkWell Press Productivity Co. And we have physical products. We have physical planners, daily planners, weekly planners, meal planners, fitness planners, all kinds of planners and journals. Because I always knew I wanted to have the services. I always wanted to be like Franklin Covey. The old Franklin Covey, where Stephen Covey would go and he would talk
Mm-hmm.
about productivity and how you can do things and being more effective, but there were the products to go with it, the tools to go with it. And that's always what I wanted. From the very beginning, I knew I wanted to have the services. I used to be a teacher. I love to teach. I love to help. I love it. I'm addicted to the light bulb moments. When people get it with how they can implement it into their business, or when they figure out that, oh, this doesn't need to be so hard. But I also wanted to have those tools. So I started off with the physical products, knowing I was going to branch into the services. And that business just took off. We scaled to 7 figures in less than 18 months. And within about the first year, I had a $1 billion company reach out to us asking to work with us to help our products get into stores and to do all those things, which was kind of crazy for somebody who had just started off the second business. And I really thoroughly loved it. We had 2 warehouses that were combined side by side. We had offices in part of one, and the back of the house was operations. We had our own shipping and fulfillment area. We had all of our warehousing back there. Although I will tell you, hiring warehouse people is not a fun part of a product-based business. That is not. But I did really love the operations and getting to have our products be in physical stores like Staples, like Barnes and Noble, Office Depot, Office Max, and letting people find us that way. And then they got in the door and it was like, okay, now let me teach you how you can use these. I want you to live your best
Mm-hmm.
life and feel productive. So there was this 2-pronged approach, which was fantastic.
Do you want to talk about the other news that
Sure,
you have for
yeah,
your
we can talk about
business?
that. Yes, because I did make the decision to sell my company. I made the decision to sell InkWell Press Productivity Co., that part of it. I am partnered now with a fantastic company who I just love, that I vetted, and I'm still involved from a different standpoint. I don't have to deal with the freighting and the manufacturing. I get to help direct what kind of productivity tools we're offering and doing all of those fun things. So it's been this amazing transition into no longer being the CEO of the company, which was a bit of a loss of an identity, right? I'd been a CEO
Yeah.
for so long of a physical product company. And that shift was very, what's the word I'm looking for? It was very jarring because I did get a lot of my value out of the doing, out of the title, out of what it looked like to everybody in the outside world. And I'm thrilled that I sold InkWell Press, because really, if I have that vision to be the Franklin Covey, what's amazing is that's what's going to allow me to do that. Because running a physical company and running a service company where I do my speaking and my books and my podcast are 2
Mm-hmm.
very different companies. It's like running opposite types of companies. So now I have all the physical products where they're being manufactured, and all of those kind of logistical headaches are someone else's. I get to put in all the input of how we're going to make these tools so they're more productive. I get to shoot the videos with them and do all of those things while still really focusing on what I'm most passionate about, which is speaking and getting to do my podcast and writing my books and doing all of that. But there was a
Yeah.
very interesting shift that happened with how I looked at what I was doing in my days and who I really was.
When you first shared with us about, considering doing this, I remember you used a phrase, you were saying, I'm sending my son to college. I think I want to be sending my business now to college. And I love that. So can you explain what that meant to you? Because I see a lot of women either, building a business to sell brings up a lot of emotion about like your worth as the leader of a company. Like,
Mm-hmm.
can I take this to the finish line? Do I need to pull in partners? And, do I still want to be involved, or do I want to build this thing and sell it totally and move on? Like, there's just so many, it brings up a lot of leadership, I think, issues for women. And I
It
love
does.
just, how you handled this. So tell us about that thought process and what you've observed.
Yes. Well, I think for a lot of us, when you're growing a company, it's like having another child. For me, I already have two kids, but it's like a third child, but it's the loudest, it's the brattiest, it throws the most tantrums. Your business, you're so connected to it and you're so invested in it. And the idea of selling your business might feel like you're abandoning your child or you're giving it up for adoption. And that feels wrong. And I've noticed that some people feel that way. Other people feel like it's very, black or white. And if you are positioning to sell, you're running your company very, very differently. What I like to look at it as is and I said this, I sent Jack, my son, off to college, and I wanted to send my company off to college. So with my son, I raised him for 18 years. I poured into him and I invested in who he was and who he was turning into. And I took him until he was, graduated from high school. And then it was like, okay, now go off into the world and do bigger things. Do bigger things than I ever did. I gave you the tools and I gave you the foundation. Now go off and soar. I didn't want my kids to ever just leave my nest. I wanted them to soar out of my nest. And it's the same thing with my company. I poured a lot into my company. I invested into it. I gave a lot of blood, sweat, tears, time, energy, money, resources, all of those things. And I took it to where I wanted to take it. I didn't want to run a giant billion-dollar organization. I think so often we feel like, too, if you're running a company, you have to always be wanting to run the $100 million company. And I didn't want that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's okay to acknowledge that. I wanted to run a company that was well into the 7 figures, but I wasn't interested in taking it to 8 or 9 figures. And
Mm-hmm.
so I gave it this beautiful foundation. And then I found these amazing partners that I worked with, and we worked simultaneously together as we transitioned that over. And now they are taking it to college. They're taking it to the next steps because they already have, hundreds of employees. They already have all that infrastructure in place. It's very hard as a small company to hit the logistics you need to, especially if you're wanting to be in stores. Because what people don't realize, first of all, is when you're selling to a big box retailer, which is how you get your products out far and wide, it's very, very specific with you have to be on the docks of that company at 2:25 on August 25th. And it's that specific. And with the cash flow, for a product like I was selling, I have to pay for the product in February. It's not going to start selling until, let's say, October, November. And then the big box retailers have 180 net terms. So you're not going to get paid for well over a year, possibly. And so managing that cash flow would have meant bringing in major investors and doing some of those things, which I wasn't interested in doing. If I'm going to run my company, I didn't want to have major investors. I wanted to be able to run my company on my own terms. So
Yeah.
by selling the company to someone who is aligned with my values, my vision of where I wanted the company to go, has really been beautiful because just this past fall, we had 17 SKUs, 17 products in Staples. We had a major end cap for 6 months. That is not something I could have done as a small company.
End
and when
cap.
I say small,
because I had to ask you this. An end cap is
yeah,
like when you're on the end of the aisle, right? Which is the stuff you notice the most,
that's the things you notice
right?
most because
Okay.
usually you get this big, beautiful display and you have all the
Yeah.
things tell a story and they work together and people see it, and it stops people in the aisles. So
Yep.
we had a big, beautiful end cap with 17 products and staples. That is not something I could have done on my own. Now, the company I sold to, they already have the relationships with the big box retailers. They already own shelving in a lot of these stores. So they could make it happen. They could take InkWell Press to the next level where more people can access it. More people get the opportunity to use the tools, which is also helping get them to my messages that I think are so important. Like we talked about earlier
Yeah.
with the time management and shifting how you work. So it's allowing me to expand in this beautiful way by not controlling every aspect. Woo, and that's
Mm-mm.
hard to do, right? Let go of
Something
that,
we,
the control.
yeah, something we talk about in the trust. And I was just on a call with Jean Christensen, one of our members. We're talking about, how many of the members were coming along and collaborating together now and working together. And I think for women, for some reason, which could be a whole other show, we don't need to diagnose it, but the why. But like women seem a little bit more reticent to partner. To it's funny because sometimes we give away all our power, and then sometimes we'll give away no power, right? Like we can't get that nice balance.
Black or
And
white,
I
very
just
one or
thought,
the other, right? No gray.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And I just think it's so beautiful how you very clearly and happily identified, like, here's the part of the bus that, like, I don't need to be driving this bus. Like my gifts here on earth from God are not driving this product bus, right? Like I'm over here delivering the gift, and who
Yeah, I'm
you
focusing on
are
my
is
zone of
that gift.
genius.
Yes.
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 You know where
So
my
you're
zone
like the
of genius is
smoking hot
not?
Stephen Covey.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
That's
I
your
might have to add
tagline.
that to my website. That's a good
with great
website.
with great legs, by the way. I mean, I tell you every time, we're always like, wow, I don't know what you do. You need to sell the leg workout. That's next. But sorry, go on. But talk about this whole idea of like it's a bit of, I don't know, for me, like if I think about making that decision, it brings up just all this stuff, and like it's almost like a bit of
It does.
surrender, and like, are they going to take care of it? Are they going to run it into the ground? Are my products
Hmm.
going to suck? Like obviously you had, and this wasn't a small decision. You really worked with these people to make sure it was the perfect fit. But how can more women think this way? What's your advice to them?
Yes. Well, I think we do. We as women tend to have that idea that it's either you give away everything or you give away nothing. And there's a lot of that
Mm,
scarcity mindset that happens. And I say that as a woman myself. And it comes to us naturally. I mean, think back not that long ago, we were all in the typing pool and there was maybe one seat at that table for a woman. And we were like, you know what? That seat, that's gonna be mine. I'm fighting
that's mine,
against the women
bitches.
next to me.
Yep.
Right? And so we have to get out of that generational trauma that we have experienced as women that gets us that mindset that it's an all or nothing, because there is a
Mm-hmm.
lot of beauty in sharing, in collaboration, and we see that a lot in the trust where women are
Mm-hmm.
working together and raising each other up and lifting each other up. I think one of the most beautiful things we can do is when we achieve a level of excellence in our career, in our industry, in our space, reaching down and lifting other women up next to us, or maybe even above us. And then they reach down and they lift us up. This is what men have been doing for generations. This is how men have
Mm-hmm.
done business for so long, for centuries. And I love that we're really shifting into that now as women. So, this idea of relinquishing some of the control is part of that. It's letting go of feeling like if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it as well. There's
Mm-hmm.
this phrase that I stumbled upon, I don't remember where, but it changed a lot for me, which is, you know, 80% done well by someone else is better than 100% done perfectly by you. And that's the thing, is we have
Mm,
this tendency to want to over perfect and have our hands into all of it. And that when we let go and we surrender, it opens up space for new things, for
yeah.
evolution, for revolution, for new opportunities to come in. But we don't have that space if we're holding so tightly to everything. So
Yeah.
when it comes to this idea or concept of selling your business, just know it doesn't have to be all or nothing. For me, when I sold the business, we have an addendum to the contract where I am still directly involved as a contractor for a certain period of time. And we meet regularly. I meet regularly with my InkWell Press team that are not on my payroll, that I do not have to do employee reviews with, that I don't have any of that to do with. I meet with them as a contractor, and I talk with them, and they say, hey, what kinds of things do you think we should be offering this fall? What sizes do you like of this? What do you want? It's like all the best parts of what
Isn't
I
that the
love
best part? You just walk in and be like, here's what I think. And then your job's
I like
done.
this. I like this. I like this. Now go make it happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. But if I hadn't been open to this idea, I wouldn't have that. And so really start thinking about what that potentially looks like for you. For some people, they don't want to be involved. A lot of companies, when they're purchasing you, they do want you to be involved, at least for a period of time. I knew I still wanted to be a part of that brand. I wanted it to be an extension of what I teach and what I create and when I speak and when I write. And they wanted that as well. So you have to have this symbiotic relationship where you're supporting and encouraging each other. So, like I just mentioned that my Oxford Talk came out in May, and InkWell Press was very happy to promote it and talk about it and share it, because they are very invested in lifting me up, and I am very invested in lifting them up. And it's this beautiful relationship of collaboration and innovation that happens because I'm not operating in a vacuum all by myself doing everything.
Yeah.
So it really is shifting how you look at business and your company and what it's capable of.
Just all of this is so different than the models we even saw, I'm going to say like 20, 30 years ago, especially for women, and how we're working, how we're seeing things differently, how we're, we just look at the things we just covered in this podcast, like, morphing time, only using your best skill sets in your business, sending your business off to college, collaboration. It's just this whole new way of being in business. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to start the show about the trust. And it was interesting when I was brainstorming on this with my team, initially my thought was like, oh, this needs to be about like, how do you build a 7 and 8 figure business? Right. And then I'm like, actually, no, like they all have done that, but how they're working differently is so exciting to me. What we are creating that's different is so exciting to me. And, my last question to you is, about the word reward, because I named this podcast Reward, because the rewards of what we have created and the ripple effects and impact, there's so much to explore there. So tell me what you feel, have been those rewards for you and those around you in all of this.
Yes. Well, so often we talk about how do we work? What if we started asking that question of how do we live? Because we're so much more. And I think that's been the reward for me, is that it has allowed me this lifestyle that I have when I am running a company. And this has been my lifestyle since basically 2009, having the freedoms, financial freedom, time freedom, lifestyle freedom, location freedom. I live where I want to live. We are so much more than just who we show up with or who we show up as at work. We're so much more than a worker bee. And being able to lean into who I am holistically, that's a beautiful reward. And I think that's a question we don't ask enough. So often we ask people, what do you do? And it's all about work. And yet we get to do so much more. We have the freedom to really explore and lean into these other compartments and these other parts of our lives, who we are, not just financially, but who we are spiritually, emotionally, relationally, all these other parts of us. And for me, I think the rewards are that I'm so cognizant of that, and I'm able to be cognizant of it, that I'm able to step back and lean into these other parts of me, that the companies that I've created have enabled that vision for me to be able to do that. And going back to that whole idea of, I had zero business experience when I got started. I started my first company with $50. And here I am, 2 books with HarperCollins, one of which was named a top business book of the year by Fortune, which is nuts. So I think that's been the reward, is I've had the space and the freedom to let the twists and turns of the path lead me to where it needed to lead me. surrendering the control and allowing myself to really step into what it is I was designed to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, the rewards are so great. It's a lot of work running your own company. Let's not gloss over that. But there are so many rewards. And I love that for my son, who's 20. I love for him that he thinks all women are CEOs. All women run their own 7-figure company, right? It seems foreign to him that they don't. So we're really creating these new models for our kids. All of it. I just love that we get to live the lifestyle that we get to live because we created it, just like we create our time, just like we create all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah. I forget sometimes the impact we have on the children is one last note, because, and my kids have seen me from the moment they were born doing what I do and participating in a lot of it. And it is funny when they think, this is the new normal, right? And I want them to see this as the new normal, like the freedom we create and the joy we have in doing what we do. And there's work to be done. There's some mornings I'm like, I can't take you to school today, gonna get your ride. But they understand it now, and they understand the freedom we have and like using their gifts, and that just, I kind of forget that until you said that. I'm like, wow, when they're Jack's age, like, what are they going to be thinking? Are they going to want to be entrepreneurial, or are they going to want to be doing different things? But this is what they grew up with. And this is what they see as not only possible, but like normal. And I just love that.
I actually got asked by Jack's college to go and speak to the business school. So the business school had me come in and speak and talk about productivity and running your own business. And afterwards, Jack came up to me and he goes, wow, Mom, you really know what you're doing. And I thought, I've been saying that for I don't know how long. But it was fun because too, he said his friends were like, oh my gosh, your mom. He said one of his friends goes, your mom is a badass. And he was like, what? So it is so good for them to see us chasing after our dreams and seeing us not revolving our lives around them, right? Seeing that we have these expanded horizons. I think that's truly a gift we give our kids because it allows them to have permission as they get older to expand their own horizons and chase after their own dreams.
Yeah. Oh, Tanya, this was great. And I love talking with you. And it's been just such a pleasure and honor getting to know you over the last several years. And to see you are so high vibe now, like you are just so high frequency, and you've made some decisions that were big decisions over the last few years and changes. I mean, if you remember, think back, like there's a lot of changes and decisions and weighty decisions where you really would sit with it, and you honored this, like you honored your intuition. You honored what you really, really felt, and look where you landed. Like, it's just unbelievable. And so have a great summer. You guys sailing around the Caribbean, right? Or what are you doing?
We are, because one of the things we did after we sold the company, my husband decided he wanted to get his captain's license so he can captain a catamaran. So we are going to the Caribbean and captaining a boat.
Does he wear a little hat? That's hot. Does he wear a hat?
I know. I was like, we draw the line. We do not call you Captain John. You are still just,
come
John.
on. You could play that later.
That's later.
And he's going to do it himself this year. Like
he's doing it himself. Yes.
He's captaining.
So this is the thing too. Like he's able to do the things he is passionate about and his dreams because I have done what I've created. It's this beautiful halo effect. Everyone around you becomes better when you decide you want to be better.
Yeah, I love it. We'll have a great summer, and I'll see you at the next Trust meeting.
Yes,
Bye.
Absolutely. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Subscribe now to the Reward Podcast to be sure to not miss an episode. And don't forget to visit jointhetrust.org to learn more about our modern community for forward-thinking 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. You can learn more, apply to join us, or refer another woman you know who is over the $1 million mark and is ready for a different type of women's network. We have events coming up both live and online that are truly creating new possibilities for female leaders. That's jointhetrust.org. See you there.